Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion, and that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, April 23rd, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast, at least we try to be. And, of course, there may be some things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start off this wonderful weekend? Well, it seems that Republicans just keep finding themselves in hot water, especially over the January 6th insurrection / failed coup d'etat by white supremacists. Some things, you hate to see it, but then again, you see it coming.
No, I know this is not fun. I know this is not great. I know this is very tough, but what I want to do, especially through here, is I don't want to rush things. I want everybody to have all the information needed. I've had it with this guy. What he did is unacceptable. Nobody can defend that, and nobody should defend it.
Okay, so Alex, let's unpack that, because I believe we have heard people say, Lindsey Graham, I remember the night of January 6th, that I've had it, I'm done, I'm off this train. How significant is it to hear those words from Kevin McCarthy, though?
Well, I think it's significant for a couple of reasons, beyond. One is what Jonathan just alluded to, the enormous gulf between what Republicans will say about Trump in public and to his face, and what they think of him and what they say about him in private, or in what they think is private. That comment from Kevin McCarthy is also significant because it's one of the things that he denied, saying yesterday that we reported in print that he said, I've had it with this guy. He said that reporting was totally false. Your viewers just heard Kevin McCarthy say it in his own voice. So again, that speaks to Kevin McCarthy's general credibility on this subject, and draw your own conclusions about other subjects. I think the two pieces of audio that you have just unveiled on this network really also speak to the complicated internal politics of the Republican Party and why Kevin McCarthy ultimately capitulates to Donald Trump. That piece of audio you just played from January 10th, where he says, I've had it with this guy, is addressing a very small number of Republican congressional leaders. And he is much blunter, much harsher in talking about Donald Trump than the first piece of audio you played from January 11th, the very next day, when he's addressing the whole Republican conference. And he is speaking disapprovingly of Donald Trump, but you don't hear the same tone of dismissiveness and hostility. He certainly doesn't say, I've had it with this guy, when he's speaking to the whole class.
And Bianna, if I could, this tape and the more tapes to come is important because for 7 years now, nearly 7 years now, there's been a recurring theme. There's been a sort of constant conversation in Washington, which is, if you only heard what the Republicans say in private about President Trump, it was almost kind of a shorthand of, well, privately, they acknowledge he's wildly unfit for the job and have little regard for him. What we have done in this book, which you can buy online right now and comes to you May 3rd, is reveal what they actually do say in private about President Trump. We're not hinting about it. We're not alluding to it. We're not referring sort of obliquely. We're talking directly, reporting directly what they're saying about President Trump, how they actually feel about the leader of their party, the contempt they had for him and still have for him to this day.
So I'm a little bit stuck because, number one, if you know something, say something. I never understand these people who have this inside track of access to former presidents, to politicians, to senators, to representatives that say all of this crazy mess, and yet you wait till you have a book deal to turn around and say something. It's like, well, Kevin McCarthy feels this way about Donald Trump. Well, we shouldn't be surprised. Republicans, or well, not Republicans, Democrats do this too. All politicians do this. They say one thing one day, and then someone comes and talks to them, and then they slightly change their tune the next day. We've seen that with all Republicans. We've seen it with all Democrats. I can tell you Republicans because I can't, because every time, Kevin McCarthy comes out and dismisses Donald Trump the next day, he still dismisses Donald Trump, just a little bit less. He doesn't really talk about, how ineffective he is as a leader or the fact he's unqualified for the position. He's saying all the things we already knew. We already knew Donald J. Trump was not qualified to be president, but a whole bunch of idiots saw a successful businessman and said, yeah, I think he'd be great because he's not a politician. It was an experiment done by idiots, and we all paid for it. But the point I'm making out of all this is, it's just that with the January 6th commission still happening, there's a lot more cockroaches being shuck out from the house as they dig into it, literally as the house digs into it. Because again, the whole thing about the commission is to find out if people were involved, which we obviously know. I mean, from text messages, from folks trying to circumvent the electoral count. At this point, I am surprised that we don't have people awaiting trial, just because of the majority of evidence that's out there. Even more so, the only person right now who's going to be actually on trial for anything as they are fighting for their political career, Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia, as of yesterday, was having a hearing because a group of concerned citizens literally brought a case against her, and the way she handled these questions in court speaks a lot that maybe, just maybe, not only is she unqualified, that again, she might be partially responsible for that entire failed coup on that day.
Marjorie Taylor Greene testified under oath in court this morning. This all centers on a lawsuit trying to ban the controversial congresswoman from running for re-election over her alleged role in the Capitol assault. NBC's Blaine Alexander has been following this story all day from Atlanta for us. So, Blaine, tell us what Congresswoman Greene said in court today.
Well, Aaron, that testimony is still going on. She's been on the stand for just under an hour in this hearing here behind me in downtown Atlanta. And now the first part of the hearing really kind of was a course in constitutional history. This entire thing centers around a provision on the 14th Amendment that a group of Georgia voters have filed, essentially saying that she should be ineligible to run for a second term. She shouldn't be on the ballot because of, they say, her alleged role in the January 6th attacks. Now, her attorney has been strongly saying she wasn't somebody who had a role in this and planning it. She was a victim herself. But what we're hearing on the stand is the attorney for those voters pointing to a series of tweets from the Congresswoman, casting doubt on the results of the 2020 election. Recently, a line of questioning centered around a quote where she was quoted in an article essentially saying that Speaker Nancy Pelosi is a traitor. So those are the types of questions that we're hearing in this hearing so far. And the judge early in the hearing actually labeled her a combative witness, a hostile witness. Here's one exchange that we heard earlier this morning. Take a look.
If somebody broke the law in a way designed to interfere with the process of counting the electoral college votes, that person would be an enemy of the Constitution.
You mean interrupting Congress? Is that what you're referring to?
Doing anything unlawfully to interfere with the process of counting the electoral votes.
Interrupting Congress, like when the Democrats interrupted Congress and had a sit-in on the House floor and stopped Congress.
And Aaron, I want to talk about the significance of this. Of course, it goes beyond Atlanta, it goes beyond Georgia. This really could be noteworthy in the precedent that it sets with possible other challenges for other lawmakers around the country. The other piece of this is that it's garnering a lot of attention. Former President Trump put out a rather lengthy statement in her support yesterday. Representative Matt Gaetz is inside of this hearing. He's been tweeting about it. There's been a lot of eyes on this particular proceeding in the precedent that it could possibly set, Aaron.
So let me get this straight. Marjorie Taylor Greene, as respectfully as she should be fighting for her critical standing because, yes, she was involved. She did help goad those people those failed white supremacists, she did goad them into going down to the Senate to stop the electoral count. But it's amazing where it says, she tries to turn around and says, oh, you mean like interrupting Congress like the Democrats set in? And I'm like, this is a woman so far removed from reality that she does not know the level of just repercussions that await her. Because instead of answering questions, she's defensive, she's dodging, I don't remember, and she's combative. Not a good look when you're in front of a judge. Just saying. But again, that was just yesterday as of Friday, so we are still waiting to see what the results will be. If the judge does rule in the favor of those that brought the case toward Marjorie Taylor Greene, she will be disqualified from holding any political office in Congress. I would be so grateful if we could do that to everybody. Just because, again, you have Matt Gaetz and you have Donald Trump in your corner.
Have consequences that can affect.
Quiet you. So it's amazing that you have Donald Trump, who again will say anything to remain famous, and you think Matt Gaetz will kind of be quiet considering the legal case that's against him right now. You think of all people, maybe you shouldn't say anything. But with Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's one of those many examples of just how easy it is to get into college. Not only how easy it is to get into politics, how easy it is to get elected when you tap into the anger and ignorance of some voters. When you tap into that well, it is very easy. That's how Donald Trump won. That's how a lot of the Tea Party, when they were doing their run, won seats. It's how a lot of these now extremely conservative extremists are winning seats. They're just tapping into the vein of the ignorant and the frustrated. And when you're ignorant and frustrated, it is very easy to get your attention if I show you something that you want to be. That's how Donald Trump won. Matter of fact, that's how Governor Bill Lee in Tennessee won. Everybody thinks a successful businessman is a great leader. No, a successful businessman can be a ruthless dictator. That's how he got to be successful, because he might have done things that might have been morally questionable or borderline unethical actually. But again, trying to explain that to individuals, they'll be like, well, that's what I voted for and I'm going with that. And that's the reason why I say education is vital. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Moving right along, guys. Tennessee, there's news. Speaking of Tennessee, who is still lacking in the Hold My Beer competition among them, Florida, Texas, and all the other southern states. There's a bill going around in Tennessee that basically will hold against drunk drivers again. Drug driving is something you should never do. If you feel inebriated, if you feel like you have a little bit of doubt in yourself in driving and you've had more than a few, just don't drink and drive. But with that being said, Tennessee is starting to crack down on that even more so with a very controversial bill that's going through, even more controversial than the than the common law marriage law that is still in session, that has no minimum age requirement. Because I'm starting to think that most of Tennessee's chamber of politicians are just pedophiles. Because again, there is no minimum age requirement for this common law marriage bill they're trying to pass. Just want to point that out there. Meantime, we have a drunk driver bill where, again, if the drunk driver does kill a parent, that they make the drunk driver a parent via child support. I can't make this up.
Some choices have consequences that can affect people for the rest of their lives.
It's very hard.
Drivers take major risks when getting behind the wheel while drunk, and a new Tennessee bill could mean greater financial consequences if the driver kills the parent of a minor.
So on April the 13th of 2021, a drunk driver killed my 30-year-old son, Cordell, 25-year-old daughter-in-law to be, Lacey, and 4-month-old grandson.
This unexpected tragedy happened in Missouri. Cecilia Williams' son, Cordell, left behind several other children, including his eldest, 5-year-old Bentley.
They didn't ask for that. They didn't ask to lose their parents.
Cecilia came up with the idea for Bentley's law that would require a person convicted of killing a parent as a result of intoxication to pay child support for the surviving children until they're 18.
They will always remember, this is what I did to that family, you know, and it will sink into them. I can't do this again. You know, I'm supporting children that aren't mine.
Chattanooga attorney Jake Hennemer says this bill is a great idea. That is, if the money is actually paid.
Collectability is a very real problem, and predominantly the ones that, you know, cause the vehicular homicides, most of them don't have the means to pay the damages that they cause.
Cecilia's cousin Diane lives in Cleveland and decided to bring this bill to Tennessee.
It's really just a great law, and it should be nationwide.
State Representative Mark Hall sponsored the bill, and on Monday, it passed the House unanimously.
Well, it definitely sends a message that drunk driving in the state of Tennessee is no longer tolerated.
Okay, I'll say it. What the hell? What the hell? Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Let's unpack this for a second. Tennessee requires a bill. Tennessee has a bill that was just passed through the House. Unanimously, I don't know how. And don't get me wrong, drunk driving is a major crime. It is a problem. I agree. But the idea of this bill is to basically say, if you get behind the wheel, you're trash, you kill someone, you kill a parent who has children, that now you become the surrogate parent via child support. That makes no sense. Because again, it's like and of course, when it comes to some people, I think it's a great idea. How is it a great idea? How do you not know? I said, first and foremost, do you know the can of worms you just opened up? That if a person is paying child support, do you know what that also means? That also means that because there's nothing pre-existing in this law, that they can turn around and ask for visitation. They can even ask for custody of these children. Why? They're paying child support. Why do you think this is? Once you open that door, they can do that? Why do you think that? When women get raped, that the rapist can go for it? Because the simple fact of the matter is those loopholes exist. That is the reason why this bill is stupid. Because again, the number one, what is the driver going to learn? It's like, well, I'm responsible for these children. Well, if you're responsible for these children, they have now become your children. Do you not know is there any, I was trying to look into this bill. I'm like, you know what? There's no provisions from the driver wanting to claim the children. He's paying for them. He can claim them on taxes now. There's nothing from the driver going for custody. He's paying for support. He can go for custody if he wanted to, because under Tennessee law, those are all viable options. This bill is beyond. This is my tax dollars at work. This is stupid as hell. Punish the drunk driver, jail them, imprison them, but simply getting money out of them, and just like the attorney said, you can't guarantee that you'll collect on this. It's just as effective as a wrongful death suit. Even in wrongful death, you may or may not, depending on the client. If the client doesn't pay out, yeah, you might have a judgment against them, but it's not a guarantee you'll get money from them. Hell, Ron Goldman is still waiting for money from O.J. Simpson. That should tell you something. But this entire bill of Tennessee requiring drunk drivers to pay child support really makes no sense. Forget the fact that you're trying to keep people from drinking and driving. But now it's just like, now actually I take that back. It's actually updated. So it's actually headed to the governor's desk right now. So it's actually passed the House and the Senate here in Tennessee, and is now awaiting Governor Bill Lee's signature. But again, it's like, what does one get from this? You may have taken a life, so now you're stuck with paying for the lives of children afterwards. That's unfair. Arrest me for the crime, sure. If I get behind the wheel and I'm trash and I cost somebody's life, then punish me to the extent of the law. But to saddle me with their children that I had no choice in, that I didn't consent to, that I didn't sit there and agree to raise, that's a little extreme. I mean, you can take away my rights, my freedoms for the actions to be taking away somebody's life. I completely understand that. But to saddle me with possibly anywhere up to 18 years of a child that I didn't bring into this world, that I have to be financially responsible for, I know this sounds completely heartless, but at the same time, this is an overreach. This is an overreach of Tennessee law that I would like to think Governor Bill Lee will avoid. But let's be honest, he probably won't. But moving right along, guys. Again, we are wondering about the fuel crisis out here in the world, and again,
the GMA coverage story. What could be the future?
Sorry about that. So we are dealing with the fuel crisis. I mean, and then you can blame Russia, which really isn't the case. Russia's the number 2 producer of oil in the world, followed by Iraq. And we take less than 8% of Russian oil. But the point I'm making is just that we are still dealing with oil companies and gas companies that are having a buku bucks in profits and see no reason to help the American people. Well, biofuels making a return, even more so that they actually did a test flight where a biofuel made from sugar water and corn had a successful flight. And again, does bring up the idea of, are we finally starting to look at alternative energy?
Future of travel. The first ever passenger flight powered by sugar, water, and corn. Transportation correspondent Gio Benitez was on it. He joined us now. Good morning, Gio.
George, good morning. Well, we landed, so that's good. And you could call it farm to flight. Corn being turned into gas, completely mimicking the kind of fuel you can put in a plane or even your car. And this morning, GMA is taking you on the history-making test flight.
We're boarding a packed flight unlike any other.
And you can see right here, this is quite literally an experiment.
Inside this engine, United Airlines is using groundbreaking new fuel made from sugar water and corn. We take off, and it's just like any other flight. United CEO Scott Kirby says that's the point.
What's that like for you personally? Because here we are in the air right now with one of the engines with sustainable fuel.
Yeah, it's a really proud moment to me to represent the people of United Airlines as leading in the global fight against climate change.
To find out how, we go inside the Madison, Wisconsin lab that's making this happen. It's called Virant.
We take the carbon from the sugar, we rearrange that using a catalytic process, and we create the same materials that you would get from a traditional petroleum refining process.
And the end product smells like gas, looks like gas.
Smells like gas, looks like gas, burns like gas.
In fact, Virant says nothing needs to change on the plane or even a car. The fuel drops right in, but burns 35 to 70% cleaner than regular fuel. And it's made from all kinds of sugars.
Corn syrup's the most readily available source to get the technology deployed today. But long term, we see things like woody biomass, corn stover, non-edible parts to be really the true holy grail of renewable fuels.
Just incredible. This is a whole new industry, and it's just the beginning. Refineries have to be built to make that fuel at a commercial scale, and they will likely be near America's farms. So for planes and cars, we're talking several years. But Michael, you saw right there, it is possible.
All right, Gio. Well, we will see. And I say this all the time. We will see. This isn't the first time that we talked about biofuels. This is not the first time. Keep in mind, Bush 2.0 was trying to push E85 ethanol, which is basically corn mixed with alcohol to make a fuel that was sustainable to run. And you realize that E85's kind of popularity has died down because of the mass production of oil. So again, we're finding ourselves in the same spot as we were before. This entire idea of that, I would love nothing more than to be off the dinosaur juice. I'll be the first person to say it. But at the same time, you have to have alternatives. I mean, the alternatives have to be pushed. We can't sit there and say that, us getting off the dinosaur juice means that we have to now figure out what's the next steps. And rightly so. But, first and foremost, kudos to the guy that gets on a plane with the words experiment on the side as you enter in. Because as a person who definitely has a fear of flying, I never want to get on a plane that says experiment on the side, because then you're going to see like fatalities. It's like going to a factory. We've had 0 days of we have had a 0 day of accidents since being on the job. Yeah, but you feel like that one day you're going in, that job may come down to one, and that one may be you. But I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I keep on saying this all the time. Alternative energy sources need to be done. I still think we need to heavily invest in water, solar, thermodynamics, and as well as finding alternative ways. But the funny thing about it is, biofuel can actually be done by a cannabis plant as well. If it isn't time to legalize marijuana and use that cannabis plant the way we know it can be used, I don't know what is. Just saying. But moving right along, guys, I know I talked about this during the midweek review where Florida was banning math books based on CRT. We all asked for examples. Well, Florida Department of Education did provide some examples, and well, see for yourself.
Race theory, Florida is banning textbooks. The State Department of Education has flagged dozens of math books for not meeting the standards. NBC6 education reporter Ari Odzer is live from Hollywood with a few examples. Hey, Ari.
Hey, Shelley, everybody was asking for examples after the state rejected 41% of K through 12 math textbooks, and now we have some. The Florida Department of Education said that the books and materials it rejected didn't meet the state's standards because they either had elements of Common Core, social emotional learning, or critical race theory.
After we multiplied, we got the factors of
teaching math, says Education Commissioner Richard Corcoran, should be free of, quote, indoctrination or exposure to dangerous and divisive concepts such as social emotional learning and critical race theory.
What I see here is a straw man argument. They are making an accusation that is simply not true. These textbooks, these instructional materials are not indoctrination. They are mathematics.
Dan Gohl is the former chief academic officer of Broward County Public Schools. Carla Hernandez-Matz is president of United Teachers of Dade. She said rejecting textbooks for the reasons given by the state is alarming.
This is something that we find ludicrous because we know that CRT has never been taught in any of our schools. It does not exist in any curriculum. Most educators never heard of the term before it started to become part of a culture war.
You can judge for yourself from the examples provided by the Florida Department of Education. Here's a bar graph chart. It's one page in an online textbook with more than 1,000 pages. Rejected because it teaches polynomials using data from a racial bias survey. Another example mentions social emotional learning, which is a philosophy infused across all subjects to teach empathy and encourage emotional and social awareness.
What I see is that the governor and the representatives from the DOE are choosing to issue indoctrination by exclusion while accusing people of indoctrination by inclusion. It is a deeply concerning trend.
7 times, exactly.
We are educating students in mathematics. We are not programming kids to memorize flashcards or times tables.
Goals.
So again, it's one of those things, guys, where it's. I was hoping, honestly, when you see something and you swear up and down, it's like, okay, we're gonna see examples. We're gonna hopefully see examples. We're gonna see something that's gonna prove your point. We hope that you actually able to do this and not sound stupid. Well, it is Florida, the reigning king of the Hold My Beer competition championship 2 years running, but I actually went to the Florida Department of Education website to look at those examples. Guys, I cannot make this up. This is directly from the Florida Department of Education. Now, they said that they rejected over 54 textbooks, right? 54 textbooks for examples of CRT, they believe. This is the 3 that they come up with. This is your 3 greatest examples. One where it literally says, and I cannot make this up, I wish I could blow this up a little bit more, but that's fine, where the application exercises, where they say the bar graph shows the differences among age groups on the implicit association test that measures the levels of racial prejudice. Higher scores indicate stronger bias. Measuring racial prejudice by age. Did anyone see CRT in this, or did I hear a math question? Or the next one right to it. Measuring racial prejudice by political identification. Where literally it has the very liberal, moderately liberal, slightly conservative, moderately conservative, very conservative. And again, look at the bottom. The data can be described by the following polynomial model of degree 3, or and of course the formulas follow, and so what? If this is your example of CRT, it is a weak sauce argument. Even more so, adding and subtracting polynomials. Anybody that ever reads this goes, okay, we're about to go with polynomials. Nobody's looking at this and going, what, me, racist? First and foremost, you're not going to have what, me, racist with a bunch of people, generic business people smiling, talking about, trying to make it add to the picture. And then, of course, more than 2 million people have tested their racial prejudice using an online version of the implicit association test. Again, not CRT, because at the very bottom, it has the models that measure bias. It, again, is math. There's no CRT about this. And then, of course, this one right here I still thought was funny. It's the social and emotional learning. It's like this feature is designed to build student agency by focus on student social and emotional learning, specifically the 5 competencies that make it the framework established by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. Again, that's standard. That alone is not CRT. And again, this is on the Florida's Department of Education website for all the world to see. But this is what they're banning. They are banning, and I said this before, this is what happens. This is what happens when you target education. When you target education, you can control populations. You can control people's way of thinking. School used to be a spot to where you were taught to think independently, think critically, think logically, that you're supposed to see something and question it and try to make it better. That's what it's designed to do. But school lately has been designed to produce workers. Like, for example, I say this example all the time. You want to know how I know schools are no longer producing business owners, architects, engineers, contractors, things of that nature? You want to know why? Because what is school currently right now? A group of people following one person giving directions. What's most jobs right now? A bunch of people following one person giving directions. They're not grooming them to think, they're grooming them to follow. And Florida is currently doing just that, with the fact they're trying to push CRT where CRT cannot be found. But they're going after math because math is just like science. We can prove ourselves right all the time. It's irrefutable. But again, Florida thinks otherwise. Even more so that even Governor Ron DeSantis has decided that he is now going to take on the mouse full term. Even more so by going after him the only way a corrupt governor knows how, through the law.
As promised tonight, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signing a law ending Disney's self-government and tax breaks, a unique privilege the theme park has had here for 55 years.
Ultimately, this state is governed by the best interests of the people of this state, not by any one woke corporation. We're not going to let them take over the state.
70 yeas, 38 days. Florida's legislature passed the law yesterday, a major victory for DeSantis in his fight with Disney, a new culture war battle, after the entertainment company called for the repeal of the state's parental rights and education law, what critics call the Don't Say Gay law, that prohibits classroom instruction of sexual orientation or gender identity for children in kindergarten through 3rd grade.
We signed the bill, and then, and incredibly, they say, we are going to work to repeal parents' rights in Florida.
The self-government at Disney is called the Reedy Creek Improvement District. It provides fire, EMS, electricity, and other functions like any other government would. The Orange County tax collector, Scott Randolph, a Democrat, says now property taxes will have to be hiked at least 25% to make up for what Reedy Creek has paid for.
They'd probably have to cut services everywhere and raise taxes at the same time.
Disney tonight has not commented. It will take at least a year for the transition to local government. Lester?
Carrie. Man, again, all I can sit there and say is DeSantis is really feeling himself. You're going to go after a billion-dollar company that owns more intellectual properties than almost any other conglomerate on earth. And you decided that you're going to go after Disneyland. Good luck with that. I mean, yes, they unfortunately with Florida, king of the whole my beer competition, they decided to go after the cash cow. Keep in mind, yes, Florida has Universal Studios. Yes, they have the South Beach. They have Fort Lauderdale and Daytona and many other tourist attractions. But 9 times out of 10, when people go to Florida for the first time or take their families there, they go to Disneyland. And you are now putting your tourist bill you're putting your tourist bill in a dangerous position, because Disney could decide to, to pull its uproots and say, okay, we're out of Florida. I mean, after being there for so long, they've honestly been there since the 40s. Actually might be a little bit longer than that. But to be honest, Disney could just turn around and say, you know what, we're going to uproot. We're going to go to another state. We're going to go to another state that's going to welcome us and give us what we had beforehand. You don't think there's another state out there that if Disney wanted to move, that they would go ahead and do so? Oh, in a freaking heartbeat. They would. They could take, I could even dare to say, if Disneyland decided we wanted to go to Idaho and rebuild Disneyland out there, you don't think the Idaho government would sit there and be like, whatever you want, Mouse, whatever you want? And you don't think that Florida would not take a hit from the lack of Disneyland? Oh, they would. But DeSantis acts more like a spoiled child, in which he finds out that he's not the most popular kid in school. In fact, he's the kid with lice. And he finds out that a company is against him. So what does he do? He lashes out against that company. This is not a governor, folks. This is a kid with a little bit of power, with an entire Republican congressional machine behind him that will literally draw up laws and pass them in days. Don't ever say the government doesn't work fast. If Disney on a Monday could sit there and say we're against this law, by Thursday and Friday they will have laws up against them that take away their special status, signed and passed, and also by the governor's desk before lunch is served. Governments can work very fast if they choose to, but even more so, they serve at the whim of DeSantis, who unfortunately in 2024 could be a presidential candidate. But again, it's Disney's move. Disney could turn around and sit there and say, fine. They could also uproot, but at the same time, with the laws that being in place and the transitioning is actually happening, at this point, it's Disney's move. And I'm going to be honest, the mouse is kind of undefeated in this scenario. But speaking of things that just aren't making any sense, again, as I usually, speaking from the student loan side of the game, I still say whenever I see stories like this, I wonder why do a lot of us still have student loans when Biden is just passing out money like he just won the lottery.
It's another $800 million weapons package, including heavy artillery and drones, to aid Ukraine in its fight against Russia. The president also announced an additional $500 million in direct economic assistance to the Ukrainian government, as well as a new program for Ukrainian refugees to come to the United States if they have a sponsor. Joining me now is ABC's Alex Prochet in D.C. and former senior CIA field operative Daryl Block.
Okay, so I want to stop it right there because this goes in discussion. So as you saw from the beginning of that, $800 million in a security package, on top of an additional $500 million in direct economic assistance to Ukraine, and a program to help Ukraine immigrants get migrated to the U.S. 800 million, 800 million, 500 million. That's a little over $1 billion. All I'm saying, if we're throwing around money, and don't get me wrong about Ukraine, I mean, really, do not get me wrong about this. I get it. Things happen. That, we're trying to help out. But again, I feel like this is another war that we just can't seem to get away from. But we're throwing billions now. Now we're in the $1 billion range of helping Ukraine. And all I can sit there and say the entire time with Ukraine is that, how can you explain this? All I can say is, how can you explain it? And I'm speaking from the student loan side of the game. That student loans have been extended. The student loans have been extended out till August 31st. For those who are in that pile, myself included, we're watching Biden and currently the Democrats give away millions, now billions, to Ukraine, and we're sitting here like, and we can't get any relief. And again, I'm not trying to knock Ukraine as far as the situation that they're in. They're being invaded by a terrorist Russia, mostly Putin. But at the same time, for those on the U.S. side of the game, where's our assistance with student loans going? And I always sit there and say, well, they always say, well, there's no money. Yes, there is, because Biden has no problem doling it out. And if I was one of the Democrats, either in the House or in the Senate, I gotta point that out. It's like, wait a minute, we're giving all this money away to Ukraine, and yet very little money is being given towards student loan reform. And as Biden has kept on saying, well, I mean, we'll cancel some. No, motherfucker. If you're gonna turn around and give Ukraine money, then you can turn around and cancel our student debt. That's the thing about it. But again, with the way things are, with our capitalist society, it's run on debt. It's run on debt. For the way the system to work, there has to be people that are constantly in debt that are still paying because that's their revenue cycle. And I still believe that to this day. I still believe that if every American student loans were suddenly forgiven overnight, credit profiles would soar up, because student loans keep a lot of people down. They keep a lot of people from going from a home. They keep a lot of people from reaching financial freedom. They keep a lot of people from, just trying to get away from the danger of being one or two paycheck away from being homeless. Because again, the interest loans on these student loans is crazy. The fact that the banks can get away with it is almost damn near criminal. At the same time, the actual plans, like I talked about last week, about those income directed repayment plans, which they find out that they don't work, you would think that if you're on one of those, your debt should be immediately forgiven because you pay on that thing for 10 years. So payments of 10 years, once you make enough payments, and that's how those plans work, by the way. For those IDR plans, you're paying on those for a solid 10 years until they decide, oh, we'll forgive you for the rest. 10 years of payments. Imagine being stuck with that for 10 years. I'm sitting on 2 degrees myself, and I'm still wondering what these 2 degrees are going to get me because they haven't got me where I supposedly should be. But again, imagine being saddled with that debt and not being able to move forward. That is the whole entire point with the way student loans are going, because banks will give money to kids at ridiculous rates, but they won't give those same kids business loan opportunities because they swear up and down they're terrible with money. Landlords, the same banks who will not give you a mortgage loan for a home because they want to make sure that you can pay, when you yourself as a renter is almost paying anywhere close to anywhere from $12,000 to almost over $2,000 a month for the very same place that you're staying in. But mortgage banks want to see more. I'm just saying, it's just one big route. But again, like I said before, going back to Ukraine again, yes, we're seeing Ukraine immigrants being immigrated to the U.S. I've always said it best. We have plenty of room. It's not like we can't take anybody that's willing. But if you're on the Mexico border, this might seem a little bit biased. And I mean a little bit.
At a migrant shelter in Tijuana, Mexico, claims of a double standard, special treatment for Ukrainians fleeing the war and being admitted to the U.S.
I love that the government is helping them because they're going through a really hard situation.
But that's not what happens for people here.
Exactly. We should all be treated the same way.
Bridget is Mexican and seeking asylum in the United States. Her story, just like others we met here.
Are any of you, maybe you can raise your hand if you're fleeing violence? Todos.
Yeah.
Everybody.
But they wait sometimes up to a year. A far different story from what immigration attorney Erica Pinero has seen for Ukrainian refugees.
It's a very well-organized operation with vans picking folks up at the airport.
At a separate makeshift shelter in Tijuana set up for Ukrainians, we met Alona, who fled Kyiv.
My sister from Odessa called me and say,
We're scared. See you
He
later.
went along as her family approached the border. 2 hours later, they emerged on the U.S. side where they were picked up by family friends.
How are you feeling?
Happy?
Relief for her, but back in Mexico, frustration.
How do you guys account for the difference in the treatment between them and you guys? Racism.
The Biden administration responding, saying while most migrants are still kept from crossing the southern border by the Title 42 public health order, it's granting, quote, exceptions to particularly vulnerable individuals of all nationalities on a case-by-case basis. Jacob Soboroff, and
Yeah, case by case basis. I wonder what that case could be. I mean, it's not like Mexicans have been sitting at the border for a little over a year now, trying to escape cartels and trying to escape, dangerous situations, only to be set there and turned away at the border. But immigrants from Ukraine, come on down. It's a bad look, Biden. It's a bad look. It's a real bad look because you can't explain that. Well, it's a case by case basis. Really? I don't see many Ukrainians being turned away. I don't see many of you turned away at U.S. immigration centers. The same way a couple of weeks ago we talked about black immigrants over in Ukraine getting turned away from train stations because they're black. It's a little hard to swallow that pill and it's a little on the hard sell just because the simple fact of the matter is just that, yes, you are literally and figuratively making choices more like race by race. Yeah, you're not kidding, honey. And this is why I stand and say, if I was Republicans or if I ever was conservative, I'd have to have a lobotomy to be a conservative. But if I was conservative, I'd point this out. That Biden isn't as strong on immigration as he should be, and they will. And if I was them, I would use that as an example, because again, we are in the midterm elections, 5 months and counting, guys. Republicans are sitting pretty because they don't do anything but blame Democrats. Democrats are scrambling. They don't got a lot of wins. They don't have a lot of wins in this column, and right there is a prime example of pretty much not a win. When you have potential, especially when you have potential Latinx voters out there that sit there and see that, but see that you're letting Ukrainians in, not a good look. It's not a good look. Even more so the Democrats, yes, you may have got in the Honorable Kajani Brown Jackson, the first black female judge on the Supreme Court. You may have gotten that win, but it's not enough. I keep on saying this entire time, Democrats are going to have a hard time trying to convince voters to help them keep the House and the Senate, while Republicans just have to lie to idiots. That's it. And if you feel offended that I called you an idiot because you're conservative, please explain to me what conservatives have done in the last 8 years. Because the only way that you think conservatives have improved your life is either that you're rich or that you're a corporation, because that's the only way they've improved your life. They've actually destroyed everybody else's. Just saying. But again, Biden, it's not a good look because again, he's going to have to explain it. And this is why I stand and say I'm a little concerned about what the Biden administration is doing, especially immigration, because immigration is a problem that's been kicked around by every administration. Every administration has talked about improving immigration, but nobody ever does. No more money is put into the fact of we need to actually hire more lawyers. We need to actually hire more staff, and we actually need to build more immigration centers. Because when the insurgents of immigrants from Mexico and other countries started hitting us at the border, we didn't send lawyers. We didn't send food and water and medical. We did not send all the things we should have been sending. You know what we sent? Or I should say, you know what Trump sent? Trump sent soldiers, National Guard, because that's a wonderful response. You're wanting to help people that are trying to avoid cartels and just to overall their lives being threatened, and you send soldiers to the border saying, if you cross, we will shoot you. It's a problem. It's a problem in immigration. The problem in immigration is the same problem with the VA, with Veteran Affairs, the VAs. If you would think for two long-standing institutions in America, you think those would get the most assistance out of anybody. They don't. Even more so that I just showed you guys that Ukrainians are getting into the U.S. faster than Mexicans and Latinos are. And Mexicans and Latinos have been sitting at the border waiting for assistance this entire time. Biden, again, is going to have a hard time explaining that. Even more so, like I said, if I was a Republican and I'm debating Biden, there's your ammo, because he can't defend it. We are a nation of immigrants, and it's amazing for us to be a nation of immigrants. We're being highly selective about who we let in, who we don't let in. That's all I'm saying. But switching gears for a second, because I wanted to bring this up as well, that Starbucks is again caught with its pants in the cookie jar, and I do mean Starbucks as a corporation, because they are now engaged in unfair labor practices, aka union busting. That literally a Starbucks in Phoenix, Arizona, the labor officials there have asked the judge to force Starbucks to reinstate 3 union activists, alleging that the entire coffee conglomerate may be involved in unfair labor practices, only because the 3 employees there were trying to do a union. I have said this once. I have said this again. Corporations hate unions. Corporations hate unions. You don't believe me? Starbucks, Amazon, Target, you don't think that all these companies out there are not investing in firms to look into union busting? They are. Amazon has been caught multiple times doing union busting, even through its employees. We've covered that. We've covered those shows here. We've covered those times and videos that were shown there. And now Starbucks is no different. Why? Because corporations hate unions, because corporations will hold them accountable. Corporations will hold unions accountable. Unions will hold corporations accountable. That's what they hate. They hate the fact that if you band together, that they do have to listen to you. Work for Kellogg's, work for John Deere, worked for various nurses and hospital staff, because they wanted more pay after the hellacious, now still ongoing 3 years of them dealing with COVID patients. But strikes do work. Very few strikes have ever ended in failure, but a lot of strikes have actually ended up successfully. But that can only be done via union. And I've been saying this all the time. If there is a union at your job, please join it. And if not, there's nothing wrong with talking about a union. A company cannot go after you a company cannot fire you for talking about unionizing. And I say this all the time because I can say this freely. I used to work at Dell. When Michael Dell was regarded as a king. And they say it all the time. The managers there that I worked with, you say it all the time. Oh, don't talk about union, because if Michael Dell finds out that a site is unionizing, that he'll close down that site and he'll move everything to a different area. Gee, why? What is a man that has everything so scared of just simply put his workers being unionized? Because again, do you like 40-hour work weeks? Do you like paid time off? Do you like actually like certain healthcare? Because all that was done by unions. None of that was given to you by corporations. All of that was done because of unions fighting to have it. So again, Starbucks with their hand in the cookie jar makes no sense, because they keep on saying, "Oh, we'll follow we follow all the labor practices and things of that nature. We never wanted to, we know we're not against unions, but we rather work directly with people." They say it all the time. Corporations say it all the time. It's not that we don't like unions. We prefer working directly with you. Oh, because you like to have the numbers game. Guys, I say this all the time. You don't believe me? Imagine a corporation trying to talk to you like a person. That corporation comes up to you like, "Hey, guy, how you doing? Doing all right? Cool. Well, we need to talk about your performance review, and it's tough times here at the company. It's tough times. So we're not actually able to give you the stuff that you are entitled to, but we hope you understand, and thank you for being a great worker." Now, if you have a union, you'll never hear that conversation. You want to know why? If a union person ever hears simple fact of the matter that anything is being taken away from you, oh, we're striking. No question. And the one thing, and that's how you get corporations' attention. You get corporations' attention by not attacking their morals. You attack the money. You attack the money, you will have their attention, because there's a story coming up about Netflix that's pretty much the same thing. But again, with Starbucks, I'm not surprised by that. Every corporation says the same thing. That the simple fact of the matter is that we're not against corporations, but why do you need them? Because we need to hold your ass accountable. That's why. Simple and plain. But I know we've been talking about Florida a lot today, guys, but one last story, actually 2 stories left before we get to our feel-good segment. And again, I keep on saying why voting matters. Voting matters for this very simple reason. I hate, and I don't hate anybody, but I hate when people say this. I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. Every vote counts. If the next story that I'm about to play doesn't explain it any better, I don't know what else to tell you. But let me tell you this before I play this video. Your vote definitely matters, because in Florida right now, Republicans are moving the chess pieces because they did not like how the last election went. So you can best know that this next midterm election coming up, they are going to make it their hardest to go after voters, especially black voters.
This is not just about this pushback against Disney today, that Florida lawmakers approved new congressional map today as well. It happened just after Democratic lawmakers shut down the state's special legislative session for more than an hour. What can you tell about all this new redistricting that's going on?
Well, this is something that the governor has been pushing for a little bit now. It wasn't something that was necessarily surprising, since state legislatures had actually handed over the ability to redraw that map to the governor. And that's really atypical. But the map that he approved basically gives 4 additional Republican-leaning districts and then takes away the Democratic national redistricting advantage that we've seen here in Florida. And you saw this point of contention on the House floor because from a black lawmaker's perspective, this redistricting is going to strip representation from the black community here in Florida. And they're worried about how much progress that takes away from the voting rights that they've been pushing for the last 10 years here. And so we saw a bit of commotion on the House floor that led to a recess. And then even when the vote was pushed forward and approved, you heard all this protest on the House floor. And so this is something that will definitely be challenged, but remains to be seen how much it will actually affect before primaries.
Okay. So for all those that were paying attention, so what Florida did, aside from a lot, because they went after they did a lot of stuff. Say what you want about progress, but when governments actually want to do something to turn to freaking fast food. But what winds up happening is that, again, I said that what these Republicans are going to do is they are definitely going to go after voters, and they're going to go after the way you vote. So a black district in Florida was basically being stripped because the voting maps are being redesigned. Happened here in Tennessee as well. Specifically Middle Tennessee, where again, they're trying to remap the districts, and in doing so, removes potential representatives for your county. In this case, in Florida, it was a black community that actually did have a black Democratic representative whose position may now disappear because of map redesigning. And I keep on saying this all the time. They're trying to find unique ways, because keep in mind, in Florida, there are multiple conservative-leaning counties, which are now going to be increased due to this map redesign. They are trying to basically move the goalposts. That's what I've been trying to say to you guys this entire time. Republicans have realized that the special election that gave the Democrats a slim majority in Congress, they realized they were looking at voting the wrong way. Instead of going federal, they went states. That's why a lot of these conservative-leaning states have different voting laws. Florida being one of them, Texas being one of them, Georgia being another, Tennessee's no different. They are simply trying to change the voting laws because they know if they do, they can eliminate minority voting, they can eliminate mail-in voting, they'll make mail-in voting harder, but they cannot eliminate it. But the point I'm making is, Republicans right now are going statewide because they're setting up the roadblocks. They're going to make it difficult for you to vote. And this is why I keep saying all the time, your vote definitely does freaking matter. If your vote didn't matter, they would not be trying their hardest to make it harder for you to vote. I'm just saying, they wouldn't make it harder. They would not be trying as hard as they are right now to make sure that happens. That's all I'm saying. But again, like I said, midterms are coming up. You're going to see a whole lot of begging, a whole lot of hand holding, a whole lot of ass kissing. And that's just Democrats. Like I said before, Republicans are going to have it easy. But moving right along before we get to our feel good segment, I did talk about Netflix. And Netflix, as of yesterday, is not having a good day after losing almost 200,000 plus subscribers. Gee, I wonder why.
For the first time in more than a decade, Netflix lost subscribers, 200,000 of them. The stunning decline sending the media giant stock nosediving 35% today.
It's a disaster for anybody who owned it at this point.
A major setback for the longtime frontrunner in the streaming race.
Forecast that it would lose even more subscribers going into its spring quarter, roughly 2 million subscribers.
Netflix says suspending service in Russia, increasing competition, inflation, and easing pandemic restrictions are partly to blame.
COVID created a lot of noise and how to read the situation, boosted us a lot in 2020.
Now, in an attempt to reverse the trend, changes are on the way, and they could include a crackdown on password sharing. The platform boasts 220 million subscribers, but estimates another 100 million households are watching without paying. Netflix is also weighing a lower priced option that would include ads, a change in tune from several years ago when CEO Reed Hastings posted, "No advertising coming onto Netflix, period."
The first time it actually acknowledged that competition is really cutting into its ability to grow.
Netflix's loss has sent shockwaves across the streaming industry, with other media stocks also falling today.
Suddenly, the market has begun to reassess what the potential is for streaming.
A warning experts say that streaming has limits. Emily Eckett.
Yes, streaming does have limits, but I just find it interesting that, Netflix comes out and says, we're going to crack down on password sharing. Even though it was chugging quite along, they upped their prices. They actually upped their prices. Let's do this differently. Let's chronologically design this. Netflix hikes their prices up almost once every year. I mean, it went from $7. I think it's around $9 if you get the basic one. And especially I think it's $5 more if you add on additional screens, which again, makes no sense. If you're paying for additional screens, you're basically watching Netflix in multiple areas. So that's the part which bothered me. If you're paying for additional screens, which means that more than one person can be watching the same Netflix, watching the same Netflix account at the same time, it's like, what are you guys arguing about? You're getting extra money. To me, this is not, they can sit there and blame the pandemic because that's the popular thing to do right now. Oh, our profits are down. Well, it's because of the pandemic. Oh, it's because of inflation. Oh, it's because of this. No, Netflix, it's because of your own greed. It's your greed. That's what it is. Netflix sat there and Netflix did what, what Netflix did? Netflix did what every apartment leasing company does. Every year, somehow, the same thing that you're getting at the place you live, if you live in an apartment. If you're like me, you live in an apartment. The same fees and everything else that you get go up. You get the same services, everything's the same, but the price. The price goes up to continue to provide the service that you already get. And as a renter, you can't help but feel screwed. You don't get anything different with this new price increase. So what is Netflix? How we compare this to Netflix? Easy. Because Netflix turned around and sat there and said, oh, well, because of cost, things of that nature, we're gonna have to up the price. Now everybody balked at it for a second, but everybody was like, okay, fine. It's not bad of a price. A dollar more up. Okay, fine. Accept that. It's only when they sat there and said, we're going to crack down on password sharing. And that's the part where I'm like, so you're going to go after password sharing for what reason? If people are paying for additional screens to literally watch it in different locations on the same account, what's the whole point of password sharing? Because to me, I'm just like, that sounds more like greed. You're not getting robbed per se. Like my whole thing is, you're not getting robbed per se of potential profits. This is Netflix saying, okay, we're just going to go with this because this seems a little bit greedy. Well, greed has consequences, Netflix, and 200,000 plus subscribers. Again, I have always said this best. When you want to get a company or corporation's attention, attack the money. Attack the money, you will get their attention overnight. Simply protesting, they'll ignore it. But if you start messing their bottom line, you'll have their attention. And again, Netflix is great and all, but it just goes to show you, yeah, streaming does have limits. But cable's over there going, I just need y'all to go down a little bit lower. Folks will come back to me. No, I don't see people going back to cable because streaming has become the new norm. But Netflix, it's starting to show some signs that they're going to change things, especially this lower tier pricing with ads. Which again, if you're like me, I hate ads. I hate ads with a passion until I start monetizing from them. But I hate ads with a passion. If I'm watching something that I want to be ad free, then it should be ad free. If I'm paying for it anyway. But Netflix trying to compromise and say, oh, well, we can just do a lower tier with ads, and then people still watch that, but they'll still share. Like their whole thing is trying to crack down this password sharing that they think that they're missing out on profits. If you're really that contingent, why don't you just start sending out devices with Netflix accounts to make sure that everybody does it? But then again, that's a whole other investment that Netflix doesn't want to go into. Sounds like a whole bunch of whining, for my opinion. But anyway, moving right along, I did want to go ahead and get to our feel good segment because usually how the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. It's Saturday. It's actually very pretty outside for once. So hopefully you're getting out, enjoying yourselves, relaxing from this hellacious work week. But we do want to send you guys on a good note, some good vibes, and hopefully these stories will do that. This story I did play over on Wednesday, but still, I just love this. I am unapologetically black. I love to see people who are black winning, and this lady is no exception.
He's springing from a family tradition and has some Jamaican-American roots. One entrepreneur's voyage from her day job into vegan cookies. Check this out.
I always knew that I wanted to help people, and then I started working in education nonprofits, and over time I realized that I enjoyed doing that, but there was something that I enjoyed even more, which was baking and finding a way to accommodate different people through my delicious baked goods. I was raised in Miami, Florida with a Jamaican family. I acquired my taste palette surrounded by all of these different flavors, foods. And so I grew up with a fresh coconut tree right outside my front door, sugarcane, and fresh mangoes. And so these flavors that I grew up with were all things that inspired what I chose to use in my cookies today.
It's nice.
Yeah, it literally tastes like a molasses cookie. This is a really good one as well.
Tubby's Taste is a boldly flavored, Jamaican-inspired, surprisingly vegan cookie company. Our cookies are also nut and soy-free.
Best vegan cookies I've ever had. They're so soft, you would never know they're vegan.
Safe to say that baking is in my blood. My mom, my aunt, and my grandmother, who I like to call my cake ladies, they would spend countless hours making traditional cakes, and they had me help them out. I think there's something important about seeing people who look like you doing something that gives you the confidence to think that you can too. I liked making things that fit the criteria of being vegan, but also had approachable ingredients and passed my taste test. My family has always been really hardworking. It's a great feeling to know that you're making your family proud and that you're laying down some additional roots for the future generations to know that whatever they dream of, they can become.
So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Nothing against vegan cookies. Actually, I've had some vegan cheesecake that was actually pretty good, but I don't know if I'll ever make that transition over to the dark side. I like food and meat too much. But anyway, love to celebrate black businesses, and that's actually one of them. The next story I got, guys, is honestly really heartwarming as far as immigrant kids actually learning English through chess, and not only learning English, but actually learning confidence. Again, I've always said it best. As long as you can instill that in a child, you have done the world a service.
At Stow Elementary School in Raleigh, North Carolina, the chess lessons go well beyond the board. These students are refugees from Afghanistan, forced to flee their country with their families when the Taliban regained control.
They love their home, they love their country, and it has been a difficult transition.
Cindy Linton teaches English as a second language. Incorporating critical thinking, she says, has been especially difficult.
It's kind of hard to do that when I don't speak their language and they don't know a lot of English yet.
A friend suggested she introduce the game of chess. To help, she brought in chess grandmaster Elshan Moradiabadi, one of the world's most preeminent players. Born in Iran, he speaks Farsi and knows a lot about what these students are going through.
It was the torn apart country after this 8 years war with Iraq.
Chess has given you a lot.
It has given me everything.
Now, through the game, he's giving them a new way to learn English.
Do you like playing chess? Yeah. You do? Yeah.
Chess has a rich history across the Middle East, but at points in Afghanistan's history, it's been completely banned by the Taliban. But not here.
Have you noticed a change in them already?
Yes, I have. They are getting much more assertive, much more confident. Chess has helped break down the language barrier.
I always tell my students it's not about winning, it's about learning. Winning is just the icing on the cake.
A brilliant strategy all around.
And again, I thought that was pretty cool too. I actually enjoy chess. It's actually been a long time since I actually played chess. But when I did play it, it was definitely fun and like to see kids thrive. And I say, boy, it's not always sports. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love sports. I love watching kids play. I love, watching my son play baseball, and I love, watching my niece and nephews play. I mean, don't get me wrong about sports. Sports does actually do a lot more than just teach you about the game. It definitely does teach you about life lessons. Chess is no different. Chess and checkers and Uno is a lesson. Uno is a life lesson that just goes to show you that you cannot trust anybody at the card table. And plus, people need to read the rules in Uno and draw four. That's all I'm saying. But again, shout out to that as far as those kids actually just learning life through chess. Last story I got, guys, is if I ever was a Catholic, I would go to this guy's church. Reason being, you know what? I just gonna play a video.
They say in the hood, it's a new day. Let's get it.
Bronx-born Joseph Espaillat just became the youngest bishop in the United States at the age of 45.
When the call came in from the Vatican, you didn't pick up the phone at first?
That is correct, Al. I cannot tell a lie. 4 times this call from Washington, D.C., and I was just like, I'm not picking this up. I don't know anybody money. Then the 6th time I said, okay, I better pick this up.
When did you really get serious and think, this is my calling?
I went to high school. It was there that a great priest challenged me. He said, Joe, I think God might be calling you to become a priest. And at that point, it wasn't like, okay. It was like, okay. I said to the Lord, give me a sign. And the sign was, give me a full ride to Fordham University in the Bronx. And then after I graduated from Fordham, this was an intense spirituality year out in Northampton, Pennsylvania. I could do only one of 2 things, Al. It was either pray or talk to the corn stalks. And I decided to pray. and it was there that I said, okay, this is it. This is 100%. I'm going to put everything into it and keep going.
Ordained to the priesthood in 2013, Espaillat knew he was meant to reach people in his own way. Among them, rapping.
Well, the story is that there was a talent show at this parish, and a couple of the young boys, but they wanted to rap, these secular songs, and they had a lot of bad words in them. And I said, I bet you money I could come up with a rap song. And they were like, oh, no, Father, you rap, you can't rap. And I was like, watch.
The bishop also hosts a podcast.
This is sainthood in the city.
They think a saint can't be hip, a saint can't be cool, a saint, can't wear hoodies, a saint can't wear Jordans. And we just said, let's just go out there and let's do it.
He's a different voice for the church than some are used to.
What do you say to those folks? Because a ministry is a ministry, and you've got to connect with people where they are, I would think.
You are 100% on the money, Al. And I tell those people, Jesus preached to his people in his day using their language, using their images, using their culture.
Espaillat also making history as the first Dominican bishop
in the New York Archdiocese. What does that mean to you, and what does it mean to your community?
The Latinos here in the Archdiocese of New York, here in New York City, we're just happy, to see somebody who looks like them, who speaks like them, who eats like them. It's a nod to the people of color, of minority, and saying, we see you, and you are important. And because we see you, and because you are important, here's one of your own.
As for what the future holds, he's got faith. I can't let you go without seeing if I could get maybe a little freestyle something going here.
Oh man. I didn't think you would put me on the spot, Al. Jesus came so we might live. So let us offer up our lives and simply give of our time, selves, and possessions. Let us love one another without condition. Easy. This will not be. Put all your faith and trust in the Trinity. Our Mother Mary will be there to lead and guide until her only Son we love and find.
That's perfect.
That's great.
Yeah. And look, he raises such a good point.
And again, I thought that was cool. I mean, a rapping archbishop. And again, say what you want. Really say what you want. I mean, I understand people have their religious areas as far as, what you believe, what you may not believe. That's cool. But the whole thing about it is this man does believe. I mean, the reason why I like that story so much is that the man does believe in his mission. He does believe in making an impact to his community. At the same time, when's the last time you heard an archbishop sit there and tell you about, man, I bet you I can do it? Wait, y'all can gamble? It's like, if I was one of those kids if that archbishop came in there and it's like, man, we can't rap because rap's got this. Oh, yes, you can. No, you can't. I bet you money you can. Y'all can gamble? I was like, wait a second. We can gamble? No. I mean, but again, his whole idea, some people just find the calling. Some people are devout. Some people are really genuinely about what they want to do in life. And I cannot knock that. I can only respect that. And the man can spit some bars. The man can definitely spit some bars. I'm not knocking that. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. So before I do get out of here, I do want to thank you all for liking, for sharing, for letting people know we're up and live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before I do get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out the guys, first and foremost, at Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. I certainly appreciate that. You can definitely find them on YouTube as well as Facebook, REG Present Geek Salad. Also, shout out to my buddy Vaughn, Avon Witherspoon on Facebook, BigBZ on all socials, where you can definitely find him and his podcast, as you can see there, with Smoking Trailer Sundays and the REF File podcast. But definitely check him out on Facebook at Ada.Von Witherspoon, and of course, BigBZ on all socials. As for yours, you can find me on my IG handle at Blackbox447. My words are going out the window. Where I usually post a lot of reviews, video game reviews, video games, music, television, and of course some gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, I'm also about positivity and moving people forward and just trying to get us with a different outlook for 2022. That's what I truly believe in. For all those looking at the bottom, as you see the actual link at the bottom, we actually blow it up a little bit better for you guys. If you copy and paste that copy that link that you're seeing right there into your browser, copy that link into your browser. Let's try this again. This is terrible. If you copy a link into your browser, it'll take you to the link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, get bitten off on this podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe to let the people know what I'm doing because I definitely do enjoy this. Also, as I've said before, guys, please wear a mask when you go out. Please get your boosters if you hadn't already got them. We are simply trying to knock this pandemic down. I know that for a lot of places, the mask requirement is starting to be removed. I get it. I understand it. I'm still wearing a mask myself because honestly, I don't trust a lot of people. But at the same time, we've been here before. We've been here before that when the cases go down, people tend to be relaxed. We cannot be relaxed right now. We must be vigilant. We must move forward. And that's the only way we're going to get past this pandemic is that we all work together. That's all I'm saying. Also, again, be kind. Be kind. I don't want to sound too copyright like Bill and Ted, but Bill and Ted's excellent venture, be excellent to one each other. Be excellent to one another. Party on. But also say at the same time, be kind. It takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything in you to be a dick. At the same time, If you have the ability to make somebody's life great, whether it's a minute, day, an hour, or a lifetime, go ahead and do so. The world could use that kind of kindness. That's all I'm saying. Aside from that, guys, the last thing to say about how the Frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply just giving you all the information and allow you to make up your own mind, but we're providing a logical perspective right beside it. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, as we have just elected our first African-American woman on the Supreme Court Justice, and that's a beautiful thing to say. When we don't learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves the same questions every year. Why does everything go up on my paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the frack did we get here? Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys thought about everything that we've done today. Aside from that, guys, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.